So hello everyone, this is the Sports Show podcast, and today we're joined with a new guest. We're doing a run through of UFC 287 with Alex from Axel 72 on YouTube. How are you, mate?
Nice one, mate. How's it going? It's a pleasure to be on the channel, mate.
Brilliant, mate. It's all good. So, of course, it's going to be a new type of video, everyone. So just bear with us. But we're just going to get straight into it here. The very first fight on the main card of UFC 287 is, of course, Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya. This for the second time, of course, on the in the UFC anyway. They've had fights in kickboxing and stuff, which is probably a tough subject for Israel Adesanya. But the
Yeah.
UFC fight, he unfortunately got beat, which I was hoping he would have won. But we'll touch on that later on. The very first fight is Raul Rosas Jr. against Christian Rodriguez. Of course, Raul Rosas Jr. is still undefeated, but he is a favorite for this fight. Sorry, he impressed obviously on the Contender Series, and he had a good stoppage win. What do you think? What's your first impression of him? Because from me, he looks like a strong fighter. He's young. What do you think of him?
Of course, I mean he's coming in. He's only 18 years old. He's one of the youngest fighters, if the youngest fighter in the UFC.
Yeah,
And the way that he kind of dominated his first fight just so kind of easily, just the way he just got on the back straight away, used his strength, and just stayed on there until eventually the opponent was forced to tap out. It was just such a dominating victory, and he's entertaining as well. So what more can you ask for?
of course. And we seen that after he was on the mic with, I'm not sure who was doing the interviews that day, but he was saying about getting the 60 G's.
Yes, yes.
He's a talker, and he makes fans want to watch him, which is of course what you want in a fighter. It gets that popularity. But I don't know much about the other guy, Christian Rodriguez. I don't know if you do, but I think if Rod Rosas Jr. is on his day, I don't think I can see him. I don't think I can see him getting beat.
No, I mean, of course. I mean, Rodriguez, he's a tough opponent, and he's at a kind of similar point in his career to Rosas Jr., really. I mean, he is, of course, a bit older, 7 years older in 25, and he's a slick striker. He's got solid movement. He is coming off a big win versus Weems, but he's not going to be physically as strong as what I think Rosas Jr. is, and he does get taken down quite a lot. And so I think Rosas Jr. is going to be able to take him down, and I don't see Rosas Jr. when he has taken him down having any problems with getting him out of there.
Yeah, of course. And my prediction for this fight, I would say Rod Rosas Jr. rear naked choke. I think it may be something similar to what you're trying to say. What's your prediction?
I'd probably say round two submission. Yeah, rear naked choke submission.
Great. So we're just gonna move on to the second fight, Kevin Holland against another guy. I'm not even gonna try and pronounce his name, Santiago someone, because I'll just end up making a fool of myself here. But it is what it is. Of course, Kevin Holland coming off two defeats. I like
Mhm.
Kevin Holland as a fighter. I don't know about you. I like his fighting style. He talks a lot, which is something I like. What
Mhm.
about yourself?
No, he's a good, yeah, he's an entertaining fighter as well. I think this card is just full of entertaining fighters, and yeah, I mean he is good, of course, coming off them two defeats, and they have been quite kind of detrimental defeats to him, and so it will be interesting to see how he is planning to bounce back from that.
Yeah, and of course, even coming off them two defeats, he's still favoured for to win this fight. But do you think that's going to have quite a big impact on his performance on the night, or do you think it won't affect him?
Well, it'll be interesting to see how he comes into it. I mean, of course, he is fighting an older guy in Ponzinibbio, and he is fighting somebody who's been around the UFC for quite a while as well as like him, and so I mean, it'll be interesting. Oh, have we cut you out here?
I've still got you here. Like, I don't know about yourself.
Oh, yeah, sorry, no, it cut out for a second. But yeah, no, I mean, Holland, he's a good striker. He's an accurate striker. He's quite an unorthodox striker, and he uses his length and his reach quite well. But Ponzinibbio, I think people are sleeping on him for this fight, and yeah, he's a good striker, a clean striker. Obviously, he's coming off a big win himself, but he hasn't won. He's only won two of his last five, and it's just the amount of volume and the combinations he throws is what something which I think would be interesting to see versus Holland, because of course Holland kind of struggled with Thompson's kind of combinations and the amount he was throwing.
Yeah, and do you see anything from him coming from that fight? Of course, Santiago. Of course, Kevin Holland would be, in my eyes, big favorite, I would say. But as you said, I'm probably sleeping on Santiago.
I actually think that Ponzinibbio is going to win. I know it's a bit of a bold shout. Maybe I'm just kind of looking too much into it, but I think with with the good jab of his and the good combinations he puts together, if he can find his range well, which of course will be tough versus Holland, I think if he can keep a high tempo, which he does like to do, and Holland did kind of look a bit like, obviously he was worn out by the end of the fight and did look like he was going to go. Obviously Holland looked tough. And probably could have been stopped many a times versus Thompson, but he did look like he was ready to go. And I think he hasn't been looking as sharp as what he used to do. And so yeah, I actually do think that Ponzinibbio will win this fight.
Yeah, and in that case, if that does happen, and especially if it's a stoppage, that's going to be three fights, and three of the past fights from Kevin Holland that he's lost. Where do you think that leaves him?
It's a tough question, really. I mean, Ponzinibbio, of course, like I said, he hasn't been on the best of runs recently, and he is older and 36. And so if he does lose to him, I don't know if it would be by a stoppage, but what would be next for him? I don't really know, to be honest. He might possibly get. I don't think he will get cut from the UFC just because of how entertaining he is, I suppose. And I think he'll probably get given at least one more chance versus maybe an up and coming prospect, or I don't really know, to be honest. But I'm sure there'll be some opponent out there that can face him.
Sure. And for my prediction anyway, I'm going with Kevin Holland win by a knockout. I'm going to be bold and safe, but then again, it's a fighting sport. Anything can happen at the end of the day, so we're just going to see what happens. But just going to move on to the next fight then. Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez. Two decent enough records, I suppose. Yanez currently undefeated in the UFC, currently on a 9-fight win streak. Definitely a tough fight for Rob Font, isn't it?
Indeed, it is. Yeah, I love Giannis as a fighter, as a boxer. He's so technically gifted. But, I mean, Font's also a striker as well, and he's a proven striker. I mean, people sometimes say he has pillow fists, but I think the combinations he does put together and the high amount of volume he does throw, this is a good test for both fighters.
Yep, and of course, Rob Font has fought some major fighters in the past. We've got Jose Aldo quite recently. How do you see this fight going for Rob Font and Adrian Yanez?
Well, I think it kind of showed from Font's last fight that his chin isn't anywhere near what it used to be, and the age is getting to him a bit. And I mean, versus Vera, pretty much every round he looked like he could have been stopped and could have gotten out there. Credit to him for not getting stopped, but I think it kind of just showed that he's not where he used to be. And I think Yanez's boxing ability and his power and his, I suppose even just his combinations and his changing of levels he throws. And even from his last fight alone, I mean, he'll probably be quite patient, so he'll probably maybe take a round to get into it. And of course, this is probably his toughest test to date. But yeah, I think this is going to be a real tough test for Font.
Yep, and what do you see from this? Of course, you said you like Adrian Yanez. Surely you're going for him for the win?
Of course I am, yes. And I think it'll be a late KO. I think it'll be a KO in round 3.
Yep, I'm going to go with a knockout too. I'm not sure what round. I'm not sure yet, but we'll see what happens anyway. Next fight is Gilbert Burns, the co-main event against Jorge Masvidal. Of course, a huge fight, a good main event or co-main event as well. What do you make of this matchup?
It's a good matchup. I do like this matchup. I think that obviously Masvidal has come out and said if he loses this fight, then he's going to retire from the UFC. I don't know if that means from fighting in general. He probably won't. I mean, he's got his whole thing going on with the boxing side of things, so he probably will go towards that. But I think as a matchup, this is a good matchup. It shows that Burns is kind of willing to get in there with anybody, as he's always shown it throughout his career. And I think there's tough bits for both fighters to take here. I mean, Burns, people are saying he'll just be able to kind of like grab him and just use his strength and just be able to take him out there easily. But I don't think that Masvidal would let that happen easily, and I think it'll be a tough test for both fighters.
Sure, and of course you said there about Jorge Masvidal retiring after this fight. It's interesting you say that because I've never heard that yet. So it's interesting for me to know that because it sort of gives that impression of there's obviously talks there of Masvidal fighting Conor McGregor after his return. That would obviously be a massive matchup in my eyes, especially being Irish with Conor McGregor. It'd be a great fight, I think. But if that does happen, then do you think he obviously will go in the box? Of course, there's the talks of the whole Jake Paul thing and everything. Where do you see him going next then if he does lose this fight?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure he said he'd retire. I think I heard it in some sort of interview somewhere. But of course, like you said, that McGregor matchup is always there. I think I would possibly prefer it in boxing if it's going to happen, because I think McGregor, if he's coming back and he's going to fight Michael Chandler, and I don't know if he wins that one, then he will definitely go on to more of a run in the UFC. But if he loses that one, then he also could retire and could go to boxing as well. And of course, I mean, we've seen Nate Diaz possibly in boxing now. We've got Jose Aldo in boxing now. We've got quite a few ex UFC fighters in boxing around there now. Of course, Anthony Pettis as well just got the win versus Jones Jr. And so I think any kind of them boxing matchups, really, they're all entertaining. They're going to sell well and could be an option for Masvidal.
Yeah, and just on that topic there of McGregor and the names went blank. Michael Chandler. Just on that topic there, do you think McGregor loses to Michael Chandler?
I probably shouldn't say yes with your about, but I don't know, to be honest. I think it'll be interesting to see how he comes in. Obviously, he's looking a bit heavier now, and it's going to be in a bit of a higher weight division. I'm not too sure which one it'd be. It might be middleweight or welterweight or whatever. But yeah, I think it'll be tough. I do like Michael Chandler as a fighter. I mean, what he did to Tony Ferguson was crazy, and I just think that the way that McGregor's going, unless he comes in and shows something crazily different to what he's done in recent years, I don't see McGregor getting the victory.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting as well to see this whole Ultimate Fighter, the way that pans out as well, because the way McGregor is, he talks a lot. There could be some psychological factors too, but you never know in MMA. And yeah, but anyway, we'll just move on. Gilbert Burns, he is the big favourite for this fight. Masvidal haven't fought in over a year. I think if I'm right, it was against Kobe Covington, was it?
Yes.
His last fight, yeah. Do you think that does affect him with being this inactive?
Well, yeah, but it's kind of, I don't know how much you know about what's happened with that. I mean, Masvidal's kind of shown his bad side, and he did kind of jump Covington, and so there's been a whole kind of court case going on between them two, and so that's why he hasn't fought. But it's not kind of been just out of like him not really wanting to. It's been him not being able to. Of course, from what he did versus Covington, I'm not going to say not going to speak too much about that. But yeah, I think it obviously can play a factor, but I believe that the area and the kind of time that Masvidal is in his career, I think it doesn't really affect him too much. I think he's going to come in and do what he's always done, and that's probably putting a well-rounded boxing display.
Yeah, and what's your prediction for this fight? Of course, it's going to be a tough one. For both fighters, I would say it's still going to be a tough fight because both fighters are still two quality fighters. But what's your prediction for this fight?
I think that it'll be a close fight. I think that it won't be a stoppage. I think Masvidal's too tough to get stopped, and I think that Burns isn't going to get stopped either, I don't believe. I mean, it might be possible that Masvidal can stop him with one of his lethal punches, because he is, of course, dangerous on the feet, but I think that Burns will just keep him at the ground. If he can keep him at the ground, then he will find success doing that. I think it won't be as easy as people are saying. I don't think there'll be a submission. I know that Burns is coming off a big victory, but I think it'll be a unanimous decision victory for Burns.
Sure, and I hope this. I don't know why. There's just this weird feeling that I hope Masvidal gets the win. I'm not sure why. Hope that happens, and maybe that means he stays in the UFC. Hopefully, a matchup between him and Conor McGregor. Maybe that's just because I like McGregor and that whole matchup would be quite interesting. But I'm not sure. We'll see what happens anyway. But we're gonna move on to the main event of the evening. This Saturday night. For the UFC middleweight championship, of course, the champion Alex Pereira against the challenger Israel Adesanya. What do you take from this fight? Your first impressions of it, the rematch?
First impressions of the rematch. It's coming quite quickly. I like how the UFC are always kind of just making sure rematches happen straight away, and they're quicker than boxing with that kind of thing. But I don't know if it might possibly be coming too soon for Adesanya. It might be possibly too soon for Pereira. Nobody really knows. I think that Adesanya definitely has a chance to win. I think people might be kind of overlooking Adesanya a bit now. But I think he's going to come in with less pressure. Of course, he's not the champion anymore, and I could see it being. Yeah, of course, it's going to be a great matchup. They are just a great matchup, and yeah, it's good to see them running it back so early on.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Adesanya was actually the slight favourite for this fight, which is quite interesting again, just to see that. Okay. Of course, they, as mentioned before, have history in kickboxing and the UFC fight with Pereira winning. How much do you think that Adesanya wants to get him back, pay a wee bit of revenge?
Oh, so much. I can't imagine there's anything else going through his head at the moment. And I mean, especially how it's happened, 3-4 times now. And yeah, it's crazy. And he's probably just fed up with Pereira at this point. And So it's going to be a driving factor, of course, and it's just got to make sure that Adesanya doesn't let that kind of emotion get to him at all, and it's got to stay focused and stay disciplined.
Yeah, and if Adesanya loses this fight, that means he's lost a lot of times. The Pereira, it means he's not the champion anymore as well. Where does that leave him from here? Is there any other fights that would make sense there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's kind of beaten everybody around the middleweight division. That showed his dominance in the division. But I think there's possible matchups. I mean, Chimaev, I think is always going to be a matchup, depending on which weight he wants to come into. There's possibly a matchup versus either Vittori or Whitaker again. But I think any of these fights that's happened have already happened before. So I don't know. I don't really know where he would go from there. Of course, there probably will just be people that will be up for a fight with him, but that's why I really do hope that Adesanya does win this one, because then, I mean, I think Pereira will probably go for maybe a Whitaker if he beats Adesanya here, and then so Adesanya, possibly Vittori, Derek Brunson probably won't. There's a couple options, but there's no real big matchup if he does lose this one, I think.
Sure. And to switch up the question, if he does win this, where does it leave him? Do you think that leaves to the trilogy fight, or is that too much to ask?
I would like. I don't see Adesanya stopping Pereira, so I think it would be a decision, and I think that would mean that it should set up a trilogy fight right after. It wouldn't even surprise me if it would just be like a couple months later. But I just think that the closeness of the two fights, I don't think this is going to be a kind of dominating fight by either fighter, and so yeah, I think that trilogy fight should realistically be set up then.
Yeah, and what's your prediction for the fight? Are you going with Adesanya or Pereira to win?
I'm going with an Adesanya unanimous decision. I think he was winning that kind of previous fight, and he just kind of was getting caught at times. But I think if he keeps it on the ground, he was having success on the ground, and if he can keep it on the ground, I know that neither of them are overly amazing on the ground, but if he can keep it on the ground, then I think that he's going to have success doing it there, and he can dominate a few rounds there, and he's just got to watch out for Pereira's power. That's what it is. His power is just crazy. But yeah, I think a unanimous decision. I think he could possibly do it.
Yeah, and I'm going with Adesanya KO, which is quite interesting as well. But I like Adesanya as a fighter. I know he's a good puncher too, and of course the same with Pereira. Can go either way this fight, but it's going to be definitely interesting. So everyone tune in Saturday night for the fight. Alex, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your thoughts.
It's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you very much. I will keep watch out for your channel. You're doing very well, mate. And yeah, well done, lad.
You too, mate. Thank you very much. See you later.